Today is the first day of the 7-day February-March 1983 retreat. We will work on a koan taken from the Mumon Kan. It's number 3 and it's called Gute Raises a Finger. We have in front of us the book by Zenkai Shibayama called Comments on the Mumon Kan. Zen Comments on the Mumon Kan. Before starting in on the koan, since it's the first day of a talk, let's say a few words about sitting and listening. Sitting down for a talk, sit as comfortable, find as comfortable a position as you can, using as many cushions as you need, benches, cushions on top of benches, it doesn't matter. Or a chair, if that helps with the listening, because if there's constant pain in your legs or joints or wherever, then it's very difficult to listen, because the pain drowns out what is being said. Also, when the pain in whatever position you have gets strong and you find yourself preoccupied or occupied with that, then change the position. Can you do it quietly? Which means with great care and attention, so that there's a minimum of rustling, of noise, apart from that which naturally occurs when one changes the position of the legs. When it is done with great care and attention, and it will not be a disturbance to others. Because then it is the attention that communicates itself, not the noise. When there's no attention, then one wants to hear oneself. Watch that. So you discover this directly for yourself. How when there's no attention, no quiet listening to all movements and motions of the body, whatever one does, then one wants to hear oneself. One does want to hear the noise one makes, because it confirms that one exists, that one is there in one shape or another. This may sound very abstract to you, but it actually happens, and you can notice it. And when you notice it, wow, will you continue with it? Then it seems so ridiculous, so unnecessary, and so wasteful, and such interference, such static. If it's not noticed, it goes on, and it strengthens this already so tremendously solid feeling of me. Me being of some importance, and the fear of me being of no importance. In our usual way of thinking, what is important. Listening to a talk, is it possible that there be real openness, as wide and spacious as the sky? Which means no resistance, no fear to listen, no fear to look in oneself about what is being said. Beware of comparing what you hear with what you already know, what someone else has said, because at the moment, at the instant of comparison, the listening switches off and the comparing starts, which is an intellectual occupation. Listening is not intellectual, it is open, it is direct, it is immediate. And it needs no thinking. Thinking in a comparative way. Or when we sit listening to a lecture, we try to impress upon our memory, we sort of make an effort, try to impress upon our memory what we're hearing so that it stays with us, so that we can refer to it at a later time. And this effort of trying to impress something upon the brain, the memory, is again interference with effortless open listening. May still, all of a sudden as you're sitting later on or walking, something may hit you that was said, and you see directly what was being spoken about. That happens regardless of whether you make this effort of impress it upon your memory or not. Maybe it's more likely to happen when this effort is not being made, because then you miss things. You're again occupied. You have an occupation, which is away from the listening. Something thoroughly perplexes you, bring your question to the meeting, and we'll open it up, look at it together, question it together. There's nothing wrong with being perplexed. This is actually what this koan and most koans are about. Not solely, but it's often the start of it, or one phase of it. This koan reads as follows. It is called Gute Raises a Finger. It's very famous, you've probably heard it or read it many times. Listen to it freshly, so you'd never heard it before. Master Gute, whenever he was questioned about Zen, say other translations, here it just says whenever he was questioned, just stuck up one finger, like that. At one time he had a young attendant whom a visitor asked, "What is the Zen your master is teaching?" The boy also stuck up one finger. Hearing of this, Gute cut off the boy's finger with a knife. As the boy ran out screaming with pain, Gute called to him. The boy turned his head, Gute stuck up his finger. The boy was suddenly enlightened. When Gute was about to die, he said to the assembled monks, "I attained Tenryu's Zen of one finger. I used it all through my life, but could not exhaust it." When he had finished saying this, he died. Other translations say, "I obtained one finger Zen from Tenryu," or "I attained this one finger Zen from Tenryu, who was his teacher, and I never exhausted it." Saying this, having said this, he died. Maybe that's the most he ever said to his monks, because all the other times was stick up his finger. You wonder How come the monks stayed? But we know very little about Gute. As a matter of fact, as I read, that's all that's known about in this story. So we don't even know if the story is true. But it doesn't matter for our purposes. It is in 3 parts. The first one, whenever Gute was asked about Zen, he held up one finger. Is this about a question and an answer? We have millions of questions. We've had them maybe since childhood, but what kind of questions are they? Sometimes parents say they go out of their mind because the kids never cease asking questions. It's just nutty at times. Another why? But maybe if one really listens to the child isn't so interested in the answers. It wants to communicate with the parent. Maybe it's found that's the only way the parent will stick around a little bit longer. Because after all, my child is asking questions. Maybe this will help him in school. Get a better grade. Learn more quickly, so I'll answer his questions. I'm not saying this is how we're doing it, but when somebody asks a question, when one must really listen openly. Why is this question asked? We have this expression, where is it coming from? Where are you coming from? Do you really want to know something? And then why do you want to know it from me? And are you going to be satisfied if I tell you? Then I'm not helping you at all. If you're satisfied, because then the question is dead. Maybe it was never very alive, as in the case we've just hypothetically talked about, that the child wants to be in touch with the parent. It wants the parent to be there, to attend to him or her. And a way of doing it is to ask questions. Not that the child is interested in the topic and wants to be instructed, or it may put up with being instructed for the sake of having some kind of relationship, which otherwise is so tenuous. The parent's always on the go, to work, to a meeting, to a club, to company, shopping, somewhere away from the children. So here is a question. What is the meaning of Zen? What is Zen? The word in Chinese Chan comes from Sanskrit, from India, Idyana, and means, translated back into English, for whatever a translation is worth, meditation. And yet I've read once that whichever Indian school of meditation uses that word, there is always a different meaning from that school. Our meditation is different from your meditation. Somehow or other with Zen is associated sitting, questioning, or attending, with a mind that is not preoccupied, that is not dominated by the past. At times it is said that is illumined, whatever that means. Clear, not clouded, not confused. That's what it means.
Clear, not clouded, not confused.
And of course, there are lots of ideas about what Zen is.
And of course, there are lots of ideas about what Zen is.
Connected with stories just like this, of something happening, hopefully not quite as painful and radical as losing a finger, but coming to enlightenment. Some method of coming to this enlightenment and submitting to this method so that one will gain this wonderful state, which one has read about.
Wonderful state, which one has read about.
Here it says, whenever people asked Gute about the meaning of Zen, he held up a finger, which means he didn't enter into the thing at all, verbally. He wouldn't say. Very likely he thoroughly understood the pitfalls of words. Maybe if you thoroughly understand what words are, how we use them, how they arise, where they come from, what they do to us and to others. And what their limitations are, how far they go and where they cannot reach. When that is understood, then maybe it's understood what Zen is, and then one maybe not even ask this question. Zen deals a lot with understanding the pitfall of words, and at the same time to see how caught up we are in them, so totally entangled in them, that we live and move in a bubble of words. Often not even a shared bubble, my bubble and your bubble. When they collide, they explode. There's an explosion. And we train our children to develop their little bubbles of words so that they can negotiate with teachers and parents and friends. It's a very rough training we put children under. It's really I don't want to be misunderstood, misquoted. Words are necessary, can be very helpful, and yet to see when a word arouses emotion, anger, jealousy, when a word is used to aggrandize oneself, a label that is, a country, America is a word, Germany is a word, Russia is a word, communism is a word, Buddhism is a word. You can say it's much more than that, but it's also a word, and it arouses feelings of reverence or awe, greatness, pride, protectiveness, defensiveness. And this we start instilling into our children. Not consciously. They see what words do to us, and so it does the same to them. Children imitate from the very beginning. It's amazing how they imitate. I saw a picture in a picture magazine the other day where a tiny baby, was hardly born, a day or two old, someone stuck out the tongue and stuck its tongue out too. You know, there's a communication in that too. to talk like the parents, to walk, to think, to act, to gesticulate like the parents or the friends. And this is what this koan is also about imitation. To bring it all into awareness, not to say it's good or bad, I don't want to do it any longer, but to see that you're doing it. At that instant, something is already thwarted or interrupted. It cannot run its full course. An instant that one notices an imitative gesture. Or one sees, well, what's the harm? What's wrong with it? There's no harm in it. It's not used to emulate somebody or to impress or impersonate. So here this teacher, whenever he was asked, what's the truth? What is it? He stuck up a finger.
What is it?
And yet he would not let you do the same thing.
And yet he would not let.
Even though his teacher had done the same thing. Isn't that kind of confusing? Isn't it inconsistent? We talked a while ago about asking questions. Are we asking a question to get an answer so we're satisfied? Or are we asking a question because we have to do it? Because we don't know, and we will not stop until we don't know. Until when? We will not satisfied with any answer that comes to us via our memory, via the brain, via thinking. And we will thoroughly question answers that other people give us. We will beware of just adopting answers that we find in books or sermons or in whatever medium issued by other people. The urge is great to be placated, to be satisfied, not to have this bothering of the question. Then we will do this. We will take the answer, believe in it, and be done with it for the moment. But how are we living? In clarity, no confusion, in freedom from attachment to the opinions of other people? There's a little biography about Gute. We'll read that because there's something interesting in it. Gute was a Zen master in China in the 9th century. According to his biography, when he was young, Gute lived alone on a mountain doing zazen. Already when he was young, something nagging deeply in him that could not be satisfied by what he maybe had heard or read. So he was sitting, questioning, looking. There's no explanation here, no description. Doing zazen, it says. One day a nun happened to come by. According to the custom in China, when two people meet, they take off their hats and exchange greetings. This nun, however, did not follow the proper etiquette. She was impolite enough to walk around Gute 3 times without taking off her head covering, stood right in front of him and said, "If you can tell me the word that satisfies me, I'll take off my head covering." Gute could say nothing in reply. The nun immediately turned to leave. And another version says she did that 3 times. Really pressuring him or something or other. And every time she stood there, say it. What is it? And no answer. When the nun turned to leave, I'm substituting some words here, this is never completely literally read from the book. Gute called out, "It's getting dark. Why don't you stay here overnight and start your trip tomorrow morning?" He wanted her to stay. There was something there that he wanted to stay close to. The nun turned back and demanded again, "I'll stay if you can give me the word." Once again, Gute was unable to say anything, and the nun simply left him. Why couldn't he say anything, or why didn't he say something? For one thing, maybe at that time one hadn't read all these collections of koans and anecdotes. They were just being in the process of happening. Today, something like this happened, the person may shoot forth a word, may come quite, quote, spontaneously, because one has read it so much and maybe has had Dharma dialogue and stuff like this, and has a certain training to respond. And yet where is the response coming from? From memory? From knowledge? From learning? From training? And it's no good. It needs to be chopped off. Here, this young man was totally dumbfounded. Why? Why was he dumbfounded? Why couldn't there be some kind of a response? We don't know, but look, you be that man, you be that Gute. This strange apparition walking around you with a hat on where she's supposed to have it off, and then demanding a word. Won't you think, what does she want me to say? What is she expecting of me? And the moment you think that, you can't respond because you're afraid of that you may not come up to snuff. You may not fulfill the expectations of this person who seems to be quite strong. She's got something that's clear. And there's also an image of oneself, of maybe not being up to par with her. An image of oneself. I'm an unenlightened person. She's enlightened, very likely, because the way she behaves, that must mean enlightenment. And I'm not. So there's she and me, and out of this division, how can there be spontaneity and freedom? Or wanting to say something, really, if I could only say something. Then there's the predominant thing in the body-mind is the want, the desire, which blocks a free flow of who knows what. But he didn't pretend anything. He didn't try to make a show of anything. He was simply dumbfounded or perplexed, not knowing. After she left, he'd already been sitting, and there was probably more of that, not knowing. Here it says, Gute was now greatly ashamed of himself. I don't know whether he was ashamed of himself. We don't know. Maybe he was. Another translation says he was deeply humiliated. Maybe he was, because in those days, as today, The idea is that a woman is sort of somehow or other spiritually or physically or one way or other inferior or not quite up to where men are. This is all a cultural conditioning which has persisted for hundreds of years in almost all cultures, for at least 2,000 years or more. And not being able to respond to women, was there humiliation there? We don't know. Maybe not. Maybe there was no definable emotion except this not knowing, being at a total loss, which is lies much deeper than an emotional response of shame, guilt, or humiliation. Because in that, there's a lot of thinking involved, and then there's usually a thinking response to salvage oneself from this predicament. Goethe did nothing to salvage himself. He didn't know. And yet, he was sitting on a mountain someplace to find out. It doesn't say here what. And the particular content or formulation of the question does not matter. It could be what is truth, what is reality, who am I, what is me. What is it? What is everything? What is this or that? If I'm not relying on the words I know about it or about me. So 10 days later, we're skipping in this story, 10 days later, an old monk came by, and this is this Master Tenryu. And Goethe told Tenryu of this encounter with a nun and asked him, what is the fundamental truth or the fundamental word of Zen? What could it be? Here it says indirectly. He told Tenryu of his encounter and asked him what the fundamental word of Zen could be. You tell me. Tenryu, without saying anything, stuck up his finger. At this moment there was an opening, an awakening, a seeing of the finger. Doesn't matter what is seen, but it matters greatly that there is seeing, unimpeded, whole seeing, in which Tenryu or the nun or the finger is not something outside, something threatening or beckoning. It is there. It is oneself. And it is whole. So from then on, as the account goes, that is all the teaching that was given by Goethe, uncompromisingly, unremittingly. And the young attendant who stayed at the monastery, took care of bringing his food, maybe straightening out his futon. He saw that. What would you do if you saw that? Wouldn't you do the same thing then? That's what Zen is. Somebody comes and asks what is Zen, and he does this, so you do that too. It can be done very innocently, very unschemingly. The boy may not have been at all wanting to imitate or pretending that he understood. This was it. So we said earlier, can there be an awareness of how one responds and where the response is coming from? And then not immediately jump on it, condemn it, evaluate it, compare it, but just see it as it is and go on. The boy wasn't doing this. He was willingly passing on this thing. He didn't realize that he didn't understand, and that is, of course, very difficult. That's the crux of the whole matter, to see that one does not see. And not fall for ersatz, fall for imitation, for empty gestures, for empty words, which one may repeat very eloquently, because one may have facility. Some people have a tremendous gift and capacity to pick up words and use them themselves and put them together, use them in a very intelligent is not the right word, skillful way, appearing to understand, because they so very much want to give that appearance of understanding. There's such fear to acknowledge that one does not understand, that one really is a know-nothing. It's a humiliating image. And the image of knowing something is so overridingly important that one will pretend one does, when in truth one does not. One may convince oneself that one does understand and then proceed, or one may understand that there is no true understanding, and one still goes ahead and uses words and gestures because of upholding this image of being in the know, being in the understanding. Listen to yourself as you talk sometimes. It happens very rarely, because one gets carried away by one's own words and by the way one impresses others, or the argument and counter-argument. Then all of a sudden, maybe an instant of attention, and one hears what's going on, and then one listens, and one will say less and listen more. Where does all this barrage of words come from? Do I really know what I'm talking about? Do I see what I'm talking about? Not know what I'm talking about. Because the words come from knowledge, from memory. But do I see directly now? And the words come out of the sea. So here the boy, raising his finger to the visitor who asked about the meaning of Zeno, who asked about the teaching of Gute. The boy raised his finger. Gute heard about it, and it says here he cut off the boy's finger. What did he cut off? This boy was convinced he knew, because this teacher that he was with, who was famous, or had lots of people coming to him, did that, and he had it from his teacher. This was it. This was the right thing. All the boy's faith and belief and security and understanding, you name it, was in this gesture. And it was cut off. What did he have left at that point? Pain. Tremendous amount of pain. That's what was there. It says he ran away howling with pain. We can't explain how these things happen. You can't say because the master called and because he raised his finger, therefore the boy came to an awakening. It happened. But very likely there was nothing for this boy to hold on to. Not even this teacher. He had revered him, he had done what this teacher had done all his life, and here it was cut off. What could he still believe in? What could he put his trust in? And yet at the moment of calling and showing, there was a seeing. Out of nothing, out of no thing, out of no nothing. In questioning who, mu, what is it, who is it, or just what, or just questioning, or just not knowing, or just sitting. What are we holding on to? What is our base of operation? Do we have one on which we feel some kind of security? Cut it off. Leave it. Plunge into this not knowing, there being nothing to attach to. Because it can all be cut off with one swing of a knife. There may be tremendous pain, tremendous fear, but that's there. Who, mu, or what is it? It's not in the way, it's there. And it's not a hindrance. At the time of death, Buddha said to the people who were around him, I used this all my life, I could never exhaust it.
I used this all my life, I could never exhaust it.
He never used it. How could he exhaust it?
He never used it.
It's not for use.
It's not for use.
It's there. When you and I are not there.
When you and I are not there.
What is it?
What is it?
We'll end here for today.